What's up? What's up? What's up, boxing world? What's up, FightHype family? Gather round, chat, gather round. Everybody gather round. Everyone gather round. It's Z-Cap time. Everyone finish your lunch up or your early dinners on the East Coast and gather round. But yeah, it's your boy Sean Zittel back at the illustrious high-tech headquarters here in Las Vegas, Nevada. No longer in Bishop, California, for the last live I did, which was Jake Paul, Nate Diaz. We were in the middle of the mountains, had horrible Wi-Fi, but we got through it. We did good. Got about 250,000 views that night, too, so it was a fun night. But back home, been covering some of the Raiders out here in Las Vegas, and then the next fight I have to go to is this Saturday. I'll head out to Glendale, Arizona for Oscar Valdez and Emmanuel Navarrete, fighting for the WBO super featherweight title. But to get started today, we got a couple topics to get to. Jermell Charlo has, he posted on Instagram that he will be facing Crawford next after this Canelo fight, which he expects to win. But let's go ahead and take a quick look at that. I was looking at the schedule here, but to start the show, Jermell Charlo says, about to shock the world, 168 in parentheses. Then I'm coming back to hold my throne down at 154. I'm the king. Nothing will stop me. Mega fights from here on out. After my boy rematch, we can give the people what they want and make the Terence Bud Crawford fight happen. Lions only, in my zone, all of that. And then Terence responds by saying, good luck in your fight. I wish you the best. I believe Terence means good luck. He means that because Charlo winning is good for him, and it would only make a potential fight between those two bigger. But I also think Terence means it in a way of good luck, you're going to need it. I don't think Terence is expecting... Actually, I know Terence isn't expecting Jermell to win that fight. He told us here on FightHype at his media day for Spence that he expects Canelo to win that fight at 168. But I think he is sincere in wishing him good luck, but also saying it in a way of good luck, you're going to need it. But Charlo, looking in tremendous shape as he prepares for 168. Let's take a look at a couple quick training clips. Shout out to the former Dominican legend, Joan Guzman, who Charlo gave a lot of credit to for that Castaño performance. And if you knew Joan Guzman as a fighter, with the way he would slide off the ropes with combinations, and that you saw a lot of that in Jermell Charlo's career best performance against Castaño when he became undisputed last May. And early on with Derek James being tied up with Errol Spence, it's been a lot of Joan Guzman with Jermell Charlo. Here they are here working on a couple, just a quick edited clip, but Charlo throwing a lot of punches and combinations on the bag, on the mitts. And he is a good combination puncher, but not the most compact punch placement with his combinations. He starts to get not wild, but a little fatter on his shots than a guy like Canelo, than a guy like Shakur Stevenson, than a guy like Inoue, than a guy like Terence Crawford. He gets a little fatter on his shots, opens up a little bit more wide when he explodes in combination, and he makes it work for him because the punches come out explosive with speed and power, and so they can overwhelm you even if one or two out of them isn't placed perfectly well. He's throwing them in bunches, so something's going to touch you. But I do think when he throws these combinations, I don't think his balance is sometimes as good. See right there against a better fighter and not Joan Guzman, training with him, he's going to get caught pulling out like that with his balance right here. Yeah, he's going to get caught doing that, I think, against Canelo. You see right there, he's very athletic, and he has good balance, but I don't think his balance is as good as some of the elite, like Tank, like Shakur, like Canelo, like Inoue, like Crawford last week. So that's going to be a little bit of a problem. He sometimes leans over his front foot a little bit, even though he's a tremendous athlete and can move around good. But again, to reconfirm what we're saying here, he's confirming here in this post that his next move is to fight Crawford next after Canelo. So that's a great fight, but I do wonder, as much as that's a great fight, what will Charlo have left after Canelo Alvarez, who I do favor to win that fight? And experts like Tim Bradley have heavily favored Canelo. Crawford has picked Canelo. I've yet to really find someone who's going out on a limb and picking Charlo yet in my interviews. That doesn't mean Charlo doesn't have a chance. 2.5-inch height advantage, almost a 3-inch height advantage, 2-inch reach advantage, an explosive athlete, a fierce competitive guy. But if Canelo is able to dominate that fight, I think Crawford and Charlo loses some luster. If it's a competitive fight and he loses, not so much. But if it turns into how it did for Crawford and Spence or something close to it, then that fight loses some luster. Even though that's the next legacy fight for Terence Crawford. But let me say what's up to some people in the chat. Inoue versus Crawford next. That's ridiculous. Some people want to see Inoue versus Tank. And I think if we're going to ask Inoue about Tank, we got to ask Tank about Terence Crawford. So that's only fair. So how difficult... let me see here. What's up, Wilson? What's up, Fraud? What's up, Ice Cold Beverage? I see Nate C asking how difficult will it be for him to come back to 154, though. That's something I'm interested in talking to Charlo about, how he thinks... it reminds me a little bit of Roy Jones going up to heavyweight for Ruiz, and then he comes back down to light heavyweight for Tarver. Wins that first fight, but his body never physically recovered and was the same, losing 20 pounds of muscle or so. Charlo already looks bulked up, going up to 68, even right here, looking pretty bulked up. So it's a lot of muscle he's putting on. I don't know how his body would react to getting back down to 154, a weight he fought at his whole career. So I just don't know. That's why, me personally, I lean a little bit more towards wanting to see Terence Crawford fight Jermell Ennis. And I think in order to make that fight happen, Crawford would have to be overpaid. That's a theory I've had since before he beat Spence. I asked Steven Espinoza about it. Espinoza doesn't seem to think he would need to overpay Crawford to make an Ennis fight, but I think since Ennis doesn't bring anything to the table yet, I love the fight. I think the fight's like, Mike McCallum, James Toney was back in the 90s. I think it's as good a fight. It's easily the best fight at welterweight, and it's as good a fight you could make in boxing, as well as Bivol Beterbiev, T.O. and Devin at 140, Tank and Shakur at 135. But since Jerron doesn't bring anything to the table, title-wise, legacy-wise, accomplishments-wise, I think they'd have to overpay Crawford a little bit to get him in the ring with Boots. But otherwise, Crawford has already let it be known he wants Charlo. But what's so up in the air about Crawford and Charlo is, what do we see September 30th with Canelo? What's left of Charlo afterwards? He could be anywhere from a two-time undisputed champion, and now Charlo is the biggest and best fight in boxing, or he could get dominated that fight and even remaining the champion in the unified. He'll have 3 belts, not all 4, because he's getting stripped of the WBO after September 30th because of Tim Tszyu. I don't know if that fight has as much luster. So for the time being, unless Charlo is super competitive with Canelo or pulls off the upset and beats him, I'd rather see Crawford and Jermell Ennis at 147 pounds. You've heard guys like Floyd Mayweather say Crawford's the best fighter in the world pound for pound, and you've also heard him say that Jermell Ennis has next and that he could fight his ass off, and he looks sensational, and he's blown away by Jerron's talent. So, reading between the lines, that's a fight probably even Floyd Mayweather wouldn't mind seeing. So I would rather see Crawford and Boots. But if Charlo, behind his jab and his ability to move around the ring, explode in combinations, boxer puncher, my favorite style, but I have questions about his balance. I have questions about his ability on defense to get out of the way of Canelo's shots consistently, because fighters like Tony Harrison and Brian Castano, in both fights, over 4 fights, rematching them both, even the fights he won in the rematch, he got hit plenty against both of them, and neither guy's quite on the level of a Canelo Alvarez. Canelo's kind of like Castano, but 10 times better. He has a similar frame, but he's bigger, stronger, a little bit more, he's a little faster, but definitely punches a lot harder, more explosive. And he puts together, a lot of the shots Castano landed is short, chopping, compact shots, or shots that Canelo can land with more thunder on Charlo. So we'll see. But I would love to see Bud and Boots first and foremost. Again, I think that's easily the best fight at welterweight. For Bud, I get it. The fight that makes the most sense is Charlo. It makes you 4-division champ, all that. But Keith Thurman's past it. He's fought once in 4 years. Virgil Ortiz's health is up in the air. We don't know if he can make welterweight. We don't know what his career is going to look like in the sport, period, going forward. But it certainly won't be at welterweight. So Virgil Ortiz, the other top young bull with Jermell Ennis, he's out of the division. Keith Thurman's inactive. No one wants to see Ugas get a shot at Crawford or anybody like that. So easily the best fight in the division is Crawford and Boots. And again, I think it's one of the best fights in boxing. But not saying Crawford's avoiding Jaron Ennis. Jaron Ennis, unfortunately, no real fault of his own due to the business of boxing, just hasn't accomplished a lot so far in his mid-20s. So if that fight never happens, it's not like some kind of duck for Crawford, but my eyes know what they see. That's the only man that could give Crawford serious competition at welterweight, and maybe even at 154 as well, if Charlo's not the same after Canelo. Tszyu's a great fight for Crawford. Stylistically, he should give no problems to Crawford in terms of figuring him out, but Tszyu is strong, and his speed is underrated. He hits hard, and he's very sharp. So Crawford and Tszyu's a good fight, too. Crawford, Tszyu, Crawford, Boots, Crawford, Charlo, those are the best fights out there for him right now. Nick Gers, Nick Gher said, "Shout me out, it's my birthday." Good one, bro. That dumbass. But L-Dub Boxing said Bud vs. Stanionis is a solid fight, but it will look like Bud vs. Mean Machine. Yeah, pretty much, because Stanionis is from the same. Is that my man Boog? What's up, Boog? Shout out to L-Dub Boxing. Mean Machine from the same country as Stanionis. Fights in a very similar style. It's just that Stanionis is a little fresher. I think he's a little tougher than Mean Machine. But they're very similar. Might be a little sharper. They're so similar. They're both from the same country, same kind of high guard style, very sharp guys. I think Stanionis is a little younger and a little tougher, but yeah, it would pretty much look like that. Stanionis is not a fight I'm interested in seeing Crawford in at all. Yeah, what's up, Boog? Good to see you, Boog. Boots would lose to Crawford even if Crawford was 40, says Joe Lewis. I get it, but I don't get this dismissiveness of Jaron Ennis. You know, I got a fight behind me, not pictured, Hopkins and Taylor, where Taylor, he had fought, you know, an old Raul Marquez and an old William Joppy, and I thought Hopkins won that first fight, but Taylor winds up upsetting Hopkins at 26 versus 40 years old because he got the opportunity. So I don't think it's out of the question Jaron could do something similar. He could pull off an upset because of his immense talent. You throw the kid in deep water, he might swim, you know, that kind of thing. But yeah, we'll see. But my thing with discrediting Boots as an opponent is name me a better fight at welterweight. You can't. And the only fight that makes, you know, and then at 54, Tszyu and Charlo are good fights too, but you can't name a better fight at welterweight than Boots for Crawford. But again, he doesn't have to take it. His mission is accomplished at welterweight. He's accomplished being undisputed there, so he's good to go. Let's take a look at this clip, though, from the Showtime All Access. Hold up. I think that's Crawford calling him a B-A-N. I'm definitely not gonna spell out that acronym, but I'm pretty sure Crawford's calling Charlo a B-A-N, and Charlo's coming back with the subtitle saying he can't fuck with me. And then it looks like James Harden asks Charlo what's going on. Crawford grabbing his dick and saying that, and then Charlo comes back.
Nah, that nigga ain't in my weight class. Bro, I'm fighting Canelo next. I don't know what that nigga talking about. I'm undisputed at 154. I already did that. Them niggas can't fuck with me, nigga.
One of the best trash talkers in boxing. No question about it. One of the best trash talkers in boxing, Jermell Charlo, who I really enjoy covering. Got my favorite style, boxer puncher style. Legit underdog against Canelo. I'm expecting Canelo to win that fight, but I love covering Charlo, and he's one of the best trash talkers in boxing. There's a clip of him talking about Crawford. I was at the round table last year in Texas, the morning of Spence and Ugas, where it's I say this with all respect, and I'd hesitate to say it with Jermell here, but it was the toughest anybody ever sounded while kind of talking about ducking another fighter. It was the most badass anyone had ever sounded. He said, my favorite quote from the whole round table, he goes, "Where's the tall, lanky motherfucker at? Why don't he fight him?" You know, he's like, Crawford's not even in my weight class. I'm trying to be undisputed right now. What's he done to even be mentioned in this world and all that? And all these roundabout ways of saying he doesn't want to fight Crawford, that he's not interested in fighting Crawford. And I get it, all the points he's making. But I always laugh when I listen to that clip, especially my favorite line is the tall, lanky. Why don't you fight the tall, lanky motherfucker? Doesn't even call Sebastian Fundora at the time by his name. But that's the toughest anyone's ever sounded by far about not wanting to fight somebody else. So Charlo is hilarious. That was a hilarious exchange with what looked like James Harden. And Charlo has always been a tougher fight than Errol Spence for Crawford. Even though I favor Crawford to win that fight, and Crawford will be favored if they fight. But Charlo's a bigger man than Spence. He's a better athlete than Spence. Faster hands, better footwork around the ring, moving around the ring. He's for all his bravado at times, I think he struggled with some self-confidence because he's talked in the past about how Errol pushed him to the limit. And I think both guys fighting to the best of their capabilities and potential, Charlo's a bigger man and a better athlete. He should be able to get the better of Errol Spence. And I think that Tony Harrison rematch, where he had to endure a year of trash talk, and I said Charlo's one of the best trash talkers in boxing. Tony Harrison, in the build-up to their rematch, had one of the all-time verbal assaults. It was one of the best trash talk sprees heading into a fight, I think, in boxing history. That's not an understatement. And I think Charlo having to sit through that and endure that, it made him a better man and a better fighter. And ever since that Harrison rematch, he's been a much better fighter than even the guy who won the WBC belt with Derek James. So yeah, but all that said, I still would favor Crawford to beat Charlo. He's just got better balance than Charlo, a little bit more compact on his shots, and gets away from, even though the Crawford we saw against Spence, where everything was tightened up to level 10, he was a little sharper defensively than Charlo too. But that's a hell of a fight. The question about Crawford and Charlo is what's left with Charlo after the Canelo fight. Is he two-time undisputed, or is he a spent fighter who took a beating and has to drop 14 pounds of muscle to get back down to a weight class that he won't be optimal at anymore? That's the question about Charlo. But he has a big heart, and I know he'll leave no stone unturned, and I am looking forward to that fight September 30th. And one big question I have about Canelo, and Jim Lampley brought this up when I interviewed him last week. Canelo's made hundreds of millions of dollars. What's the old Riddick Bowe, Marvin Hagler quote? You know, it's hard to wake up it's hard to get up and run at 5 in the morning when you're waking up on silk sheets. And that's Canelo now. And he's been waking up on silk sheets for a while and performing at a high level for years. But the last 3 fights, 1 is a fluke, 2 is a trend, 3 is a pattern, right? So for the last 3 fights, Bivol, Golovkin Part 3, and Ryder, he hasn't quite looked like that Pete Canelo Alvarez from his grabbing 4 belts in 11 months at 168. So if Canelo shows up like that, it's a fight. And I'm looking to see a rejuvenated Canelo against Charlo. I want to see Canelo rejuvenated, if not the guy from 2020 and 2021, a guy that's better than he has been the last 3 fights. So if here is the guy that blew out Callum Smith and Caleb Plant and those guys, and here's the guy that fought John Ryder, Bivol, and Golovkin the 3rd time, I want to at least see something closer to here than here. And if that guy shows up, a rejuvenated Canelo, it could be big problems for Charlo. But we'll see. We'll see. You do have to question Canelo, what he's bringing to the table at this stage in his career at 70 pro fights. Numerous injuries, lots of money made against a not young, actually he's a little younger than Charlo. Against Charlo, who's had about half the fights, a lot less wear and tear on him in terms of mileage, in number of fights. So we'll see a taller guy with longer arms who's moving up, who you think would have the frame to put the muscle on comfortably and still be explosive. So we'll see. But moving on to things. Let's talk Drummers Against It says, let's talk Valdez and Vaquero, a pivotal fight for both fights. Definitely will get to that fight. Definitely will get to Valdez and Vaquero in a moment. But want to quickly circle on this here. Shout out to my man Dan Rafael, of course, formerly with ESPN. Now Dan doing his own thing on Substack, on his own site. And Dan's still getting scoops. So Dan's saying, per sources, a fight between WBC interim super middleweight titleist David Benavidez versus Boo Boo Andrade is in the works to headline a Fall Showtime pay-per-view card. I like this idea. You guys who follow me on these lives know that I didn't love the Benavidez-Morel fight, even though it's the second best fight at 168 in boxing behind Canelo and Benavidez. The reason why I didn't love that fight is that's a real pay-per-view fight given the right amount of time. And I'm not talking about Spence Crawford and Mayweather-Pacquiao or even for my hardcores, Juanma Lopez and Yuriorkis Gamboa. I'm not saying delay Benavidez and Morel till 2030 or 2029 or 2028, but 2023, David Morrell hasn't even had 10 fights yet. Benavidez just headlined his first pay-per-view. That fight doesn't make any... You got to have, even as a hardcore boxing, just loving the sport guy who sometimes says the business be damned, sport first, business second, you got to have a little bit of mental for the business. And Benavidez-Morel, look, Morrell, unlike a lot of the other Cubanos who made it over here, he's not small. He's a 168-pounder who's going to go up to 75 one day. He's not old. He's in his early to mid-20s, 24 years old. And he's able to learn the language already. So he has all the marketability, size, youth, can speak English in the United States that all the other great Cubans who made it over here didn't have. This kid has the chance to be the first real Cuban star in America. We've had some Cuban champions, for sure. Casamayor, Lara, Gamboa. But none of them been able to even get close to crossing over or becoming a pay-per-view star. And Morrell has some of the qualities to make that happen. So why in his 10th pro fight do you feed him to Benavidez? He might beat Benavidez. And now you ruin Benavidez getting a shot at Canelo and all that. So Morrell could definitely win that fight, even as green as he is, because he's got some sweet feet. And he's got some good footwork, but he's got pop in both hands. He's got more pop in both hands and more physicality to him than Caleb Plant, but he brings some of the footwork Caleb Plant does. Doesn't bring the savvy and quite the IQ just yet and the experience of Caleb Plant, but a bigger, stronger guy than Caleb Plant, punches harder than Caleb Plant, and has some of that athletic footwork that Caleb Plant gave Benavidez problems with. But all that said, Andrade is an aging veteran who is used to getting a check that sometimes is bigger than what he's drawing due to the paydays he got with Eddie Hearn. So even though he's undefeated, even though he's been an excellent fighter for about a decade now, he's an overpriced veteran who doesn't sell or draw outside of Providence, Rhode Island. So to get him feed him to David Benavidez and continue to build up David Morrell until that's a legit Mexican audience, Cuban audience, legit pay-per-view in the Latin America and Latin world. That's having some common sense there. They could fight next year. They could fight 2 years from now. I think the sweet spot would almost be 2 years from now. For Benavidez right now, focus on getting the Canelo fight. Canelo, the chances of getting the Canelo fight just went up because I think one alternate plan they wanted to do was Spence, if he could have pulled off the upset against Crawford, which of course he didn't. But if he could have, I think they wanted to move him up and fight Canelo, and instead of making Canelo and Benavidez, they were going to make Canelo Spence. Now that's off the table, so Benavidez's chances of getting Canelo just went up. Fight Andrade. It's a very credible fight. Andrade is undefeated and has been avoided at times in his career. I think it's a fight Benavidez wins because Andrade's legs aren't what they were at 154. They weren't what they were at 160, what they were at 54, but they're even slowing down more at 68. He's made up for that in other ways by planting his feet and punching hard, in particular with his left hand, southpaw. But I don't think he's going to have the power to drop David Benavidez. I think, and then after 4 or 5 rounds, Andrade tends to coast in his fights. And he's not going to be able to do that against a guy in David Benavidez who gets better and throws more punches as the fight goes on. So I could see Andrade piecing David up with straight left hands early, but that beginning to fade as the fight goes on, kind of like it did with Plant, and then Benavidez being all over him and forcing Andrade to clinch a lot like he did Plant. And Andrade's legs aren't as fresh as Caleb Plant's are at 168. So I definitely got Benavidez beating Andrade. You guys know I do like David Benavidez. Some people will say he's ducking David Morrell. That's something he'll have to live with and hear for now. I don't exactly see it that way. I think the Morrell fight makes more sense a little bit down the road. Again, don't Mayweather Pacquiao this thing. Don't Spence Crawford it where I'm talking 5 or 6 years, but Morrell has only had 9 fights. He doesn't draw yet. And that's an excellent fight that's only going to get better a year or two from now. They could even fight at light heavyweight 2 years from now. Because Morrell's going up to... He's like David Benavidez. He's a big super middleweight. I just think that's a fight that could be a real pay-per-view one day. Not a pay-per-view thrown on because they don't want to pay the budget on Showtime Championship Boxing and thus it becomes a pay-per-view. No, a pay-per-view because it actually has a demand and an audience that will pay for it in the Cuban and Mexican markets. That's just my take on that. So, but if some people want to call it a duck, that, you know, that's your right. That's your right. But I just think that fight needs a little marination. Like Angelo Dundee said about Leonard and Hearns. Back when Angelo Dundee said the famous marination quote, he was talking about 1 year, 1 extra year, and that was it. They did 1 extra year, and then they did Leonard Hearns. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about 5 years. I'm talking about 1 or 2 years. Let Morrell continue to develop. Let him headline a Showtime Championship Boxing card. He's headlined a few Fox PBC cards. He's headlined a Showbox card, but maybe he may have actually already headlined Showtime. I can't remember if when he fought the Kazakh in his second to last fight, if that was Showbox or Showtime Championship Boxing. But yeah, so that's a great fight. Morrell could beat Benavidez, but he's green. And the kid's got some upside, not only in the ring, but at the box office. Got some upside in his marketability. Take a little time, build it up. In the meantime, Andrade is a little bit of an overpriced veteran that you can't do a whole lot with going forward. So get him out of the way by feeding him to Benavidez. So, and for Benavidez, he gets to say, I fight the guy that Canelo avoided and blah, 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 blah. Put that spin on it, and, you know, that sounds good to people and whatnot. So yeah, hopefully that fight happens later this year. I like that better, and I think, hey, it's a Showtime pay-per-view card. You could make David Morrell the co-main event, and then continue to make David Morrell the co-main event, and then hopefully you make Canelo and Benavidez in 2024, and you make David Morrell the co-main event again, just like you made him the co-main event for Tank and Ryan. Keep making him that co-main event boogeyman like they did Canelo. That's what they did with Canelo and Floyd Mayweather. They made him the co-main event 2 or 3 times, until Canelo got enough eyeballs on him to be his own headliner. And that's what they should do with Morrell in this situation. Business side isn't always my savvy, but I think I have enough common sense to realize you build that one up just a little bit. But don't let it get like Juanma Lopez and Yuriorkis Gamboa where we never see it. All right, and to keep things moving, we got over 500 people in the chat. That's lovely, man. We got, and again, drummers against Stick. I will definitely get to Valdez and Navarrete, but just want to check this right here. Someone saying, is that a tube TV in the back? Damn, dude. Yeah, it is. Again, for the millionth time, that's for the retro gaming. Got the Dreamcast on top, and the flat screens are scattered throughout the rest of the house. But Dillian Whyte, again, I'm kind of shook when it comes to talking about PEDs and boxing now after that Inoue debacle was taken out of context. But Joshua fight canceled after Dillian Whyte's doping test shows adverse findings. I believe this is the 3rd time Dillian Whyte has had problems with doping. VADA, Voluntary Anti-Doping Agency, found adverse findings. And so now that fight is off. And they're looking at a lot of people. Here's an article by Sky Sports talking about Robert Helenius and Gerald Washington are ready to step in. Derek Chisora is on the card. But I think the guy that most boxing people would rather see Joshua fight is Filip Hrgović, who's been the IBF mandatory at one point or another. That's a good fight. I think Joshua on his best night could still beat Filip Hrgović, but he questions himself a lot and doesn't have his best nights plenty of times. And Filip Hrgović, that chopping right hand, if Joshua's being a little timid with his jab, I could see that chopping right hand, which is Hrgovic's best shot, coming over that lazy jab and hurting Joshua and giving him some problems. But if Joshua's on his best and he's not, mentally right and he's not questioning himself too much, he can still handle a guy like Filip Hrgović. But that's the fight I'd want to see. I don't want to see Derek Chisora for the millionth time against a guy when we know Chisora, we know what he's going to do. I don't want to see Gerald Washington, who's always timid. I don't want to see Robert Helenius, who got knocked out in 1 round by Wilder and fought in a dungeon somewhere last Saturday and got a win. Shout out to Robert Helenius. I think Filip Hrgović is the best fight for Joshua if he wants to keep showing people he's a top heavyweight. But I don't expect them to do that. There is no rumblings on that front for Filip Hrgović even being considered. So, there's that. I mean, Chisora might be a bigger name in the UK, but again, I'd rather see the Filip Hrgović fight. So, another fight that I'll be covering this Saturday is Valdez-Navarrete. Let's take a look. You know what? Let me take a look at the odds on this fight. I believe Valdez is still a slight favorite. Yeah, Valdez is minus 180 here. Okay. WBA. It's for the WBO, but that's okay, point spreads. You don't seem like the biggest boxing site. Point spreads doesn't seem like the biggest boxing. Here's another one. So Valdez minus 160. Another one has it at minus 170. Vaquero Navarrete at plus 130. I'm picking Valdez to win this fight. He has better hand speed. His punches are more compact. He moves his head better than Navarrete. And we saw Liam Wilson from Australia badly hurt Navarrete, have him out on his feet from a left hook, and that's Valdez's best punch. He throws it even better. You know what? I think I missed the super chat at some point. I think I actually missed the super. Oh, hold on. Let me get back to it. I think I missed the super chat at some point. Let me get back to that. Jameson Childress, thank you for the super chat, brother. Said Sean, happy Monday, brother. Thank you, Jameson. Forgive me for almost missing that super chat. Sometimes I read the chat and go back and forth, and then other times I say, let me get through the show and give these people a tight format and keep things moving nice and organized so they can stay enjoying the show, and so I don't digress too much into my ramblings and my going left with this chat and that chat. But it's a tough push and pull. I like talking to you guys, but then I also want to entertain you guys and give you guys a tight, concise show. Thank you for the super chat, Jameson Childress. I'll learn that perfect balance as we go along. But got another super chat from my man Molly Mall saying Albert Bell versus the Valdez-Navarrete winner. Molly, isn't Albert Bell up at lightweight though? Isn't Albert Bell a 135, or is Bell getting all the way down to? Let me see here. Isn't my man a lightweight though? Where was his last fight at? No, he's okay. His last have been a super feather. I don't know why I always thought, well, you know, those tall dudes from Toledo like Robert Easter, those tall Ohio guys, you just start lumping them all together. They must all be at 135. But that's right. Albert Bell, 130. He's got to get a shot at some point. He keeps winning his fights against who they put him in there with at top rank. At some point, he keeps winning and winning. You got to give him a title shot. So, yeah, I could definitely see Albert Bell getting the Valdez-Navarrete winner. Molly Mall. I think he's just about due. He's coming in close. Yeah, I see he's at 130, Molly Mall, but he's coming in close to getting that title shot. Just keep winning, and Top Rank will eventually give him a shot at one of those guys who would both probably be favored to beat Albert because of those 6 knockouts in 23 fights. It'd be hard to keep those tough Mexicans off of him, but we'll see. He is brinking on just deserving that shot. He just keeps winning his fights on these Top Rank cards. But back to the fight, I have Valdez. I've always picked Valdez. But when I interviewed Vaquero a couple weeks ago, it just really started to stick with me that this guy's younger and fresher. That he's 28. Valdez is 32, but he's always in a tough fight. Always in a tough fight. He's always leaving the fight scarred, bruised, bloodied. It's never an easy night at the office for Oscar Valdez. And I'll go with my pick because I won't let emotion and things like that get to me too much. I still think he could do what he did with Burchell. Not as dominant. This is going to be a more competitive fight than Burchell. I have no question about that. But still landing that compact left hook in between all the busy shots of the other tough Mexican fighter. And he's got a little bit better defense, a little bit better speed, more compact to his shots, and he gets the job done. But part of my gut, it's like my head telling me Valdez, but part of my gut is telling me Navarrete's going to win this thing because he's younger and fresher. And he's underrated with his craft because he's awkward and it looks a little ugly at times. But he makes that ugly awkwardness and off rhythm, especially on that uppercut, work for him. And especially that uppercut, if Valdez is eating it early, Valdez's face busts up very easily. So Navarrete has plenty of power to bust him up. I'll stick with my guns. I'll stick with Valdez. I'm on the record with a Valdez pick, okay? Better head movement, more compact, faster hands, got Eddie Reynoso, but something in my gut tells me Vaquero has youth and being fresh on his side, wear and tear, hasn't had his jaw broken like Valdez did against Quigg, hasn't been in a million wars like Valdez, been in some entertaining fights, Joet Gonzalez and Isaac Dogbe, but he was the one dishing out most of the punishment in those exciting fights. That being said, though, he was a little bit of a weight bully, Navarrete, being a tall guy at 22 and 26. Now he's at 130, and Valdez is actually a small 130, so he might even be the bigger guy in this one. But we saw against Liam Wilson starting to fight guys his own size now. Now he's starting to get cracked and starting to get hurt, whereas before he'd walk through the punches of smaller men. So yeah, I got Valdez, but to my bettors out there, if you want to put a little bet on the underdog, I don't think it's a bad bet at all. So, and if you're going to bet on Navarrete, I think you bet on the late stoppage, because Valdez's face can really start to wear down. And if his face is busting up, one of those uppercuts could drop him and could start to make Eddie Reynoso or the doctor think about stopping it. But I'll stick with my guns. I'll stick with Valdez. So looking forward to covering that fight. Let me read some of the chat now. Stealth Jackson saying Boots needs to fight Stanionis. Bud gets to pick his own fights now. Fair enough, Stealth Jackson. Fair enough. I think Boots takes care of Stanionis. Stanionis, top 5 welterweight. Sharp. Very sharp. Good explosiveness. Tough. Great shape. But kind of straight up and down, no special effects. And Boots Ennis would probably dissect and, beat him up pretty good. Catch him with combinations in between punches. That's where he'd really hurt Stanionis, is catching, counterpunching Stanionis, coming straight in with his aggressive hands-up style. But I get it. I totally... Stealth Jackson, I get that. The guy's got to put in some work to get a shot at the pound-for-pound king. But I know boxing, and I don't even think you would probably disagree. Your eyes know boxing. The best fight at welterweight, hands down, is Boots and Crawford. So, but I get it. If Crawford feels like he doesn't need that fight and whatnot, I won't. People like me aren't going to call it a duck. But I do have to acknowledge what my eyes see. That would be the best fight at welterweight, bar none. I think it's one of the best fights in boxing. So, Silent Milo, what's going on? Thank you for the super chat. Silent Milo says Charlo, Crawford. Yeah, Crawford. I got Crawford, Silent Milo. Charlo's balance. Emmanuel Stewart always said the secret to a great fighter is great balance. Guys like Manny Pacquiao broke that convention at times, but Hamed too, who Emmanuel trained, but for the most part, balance really matters. It's part of what makes guys like Canelo, Inoue, Tank special. Usyk, they have an amazing balance no matter what angle they're throwing off of or what foot movement or pivot they're doing, always in balance. Charlo has good balance. I'm not saying this, but I don't think he has balance quite like the elite. I notice sometimes when he holds his hands, it's almost like he's a little front foot heavy, like he's leaning a little bit. Even as his feet are athletic and he's able to glide around the ring, he always just feels like when you watch him, he's leaning forward just a little bit. And that makes him a little bit of a sucker for the right hand. And Castaño hit him with a lot of right hands. Tony Harrison hit him with a lot of right hands. John Jackson from the Virgin Islands, the son of Julian Jackson, hit him with some right hands. And Canelo is beautiful, even though he's been a little one-dimensional with it lately. He tried it too many times with Bivol, but he's beautiful at freezing you with the lead hand feint, freezing, and bang, coming over the top with that right hand, or freezing and boom, coming with the uppercut. He's great at freezing you with lead hand feints or just measuring with the lead hand and boom, coming with the right hand. That's going to be a problem for Charlo. But then again, if Canelo's loading up too much, like he's been doing lately, Charlo can get off some shots in between him loading up and then use his footwork to get out of there and get out of the way of the big loaded up bomb, sometimes telegraphed by Canelo when he's measuring you along the ropes. He's measuring, then boom, he's ready to let it go. I think Charlo's going to get hit by that shot, but maybe he sees it coming. Maybe he uses that footwork, combinations, and makes things happen. But as for Charlo and Crawford, Silent Milo, no, I got Crawford. Crawford, even though he's the smaller guy, has the arm length of a guy almost 6 feet tall. It's one of the things that makes him special. So even though Charlo's the bigger man, he's not going to have some length advantage at long range. I don't think he's as compact a puncher as Crawford. And when I like Charlo's combinations, and I like the fury he throws them with. But when he throws them, sometimes they're just, and they're not always as sharp and as accurate and perfectly placed. Sometimes he's just exploding and throwing 5, 6, 7, 8 at a time. Crawford can sharpshoot in between those a little bit better. He's the better counterpuncher than Jermell Charlo, the sharper, more accurate counterpuncher. So, Silent Milo, I would have to favor Crawford, but I've always thought Charlo's a more competitive fight than Errol Spence was. Always thought that. Got another super chat from my man OP Gamer. Thank you for the super chat, brother. Said, should Tszyu fight for a vacant WBO versus getting elevated? Crawford versus Tszyu. It would have to be on principle. By the way, 4th and 9th got to the bag. You were in my ear for Terence Crawford. Top tier lives. Wait. By the way, 4th and 9th got to the bag. I'm a little lost on that, OP Gamer. Let me know what you mean by that. My bad. 4th and 9th got to the bag. You were in my ear for Terence Crawford. I think you're getting that. Did you make some money off a bet because I steered you right and told you don't, pick Crawford in this fight? But thank you for the super chat. To get what you're getting at, should Tszyu fight for a vacant WBO versus getting elevated? Yeah, I think that always makes more sense. That instead of elevating the guy from interim to full, maybe you make him. Well, let's take a look right here. Who would Tszyu have to fight in that scenario? WBO rankings, Box Live, super welterweight. Shout out to Box Live. This is who I always go to when I need my boxing rankings on the double. All right, let's get to WBO. All right, Tszyu. Josh Kelly? Is that Josh Kelly? Josh Kelly got all the way up to Josh Kelly. I remember the flashy, talented UK prospect who lost somewhere along the way, made all of us kind of forget about him. Josh Kelly, all the way up at number 1. Yeah, man, I'd like to see that. I've seen Mursalale, tough name to pronounce here, from Russia. Seen him fight on PPC cards. I don't think he's that impressive. Charles Conwell, I love. I can't believe Xander Zayas is already in the top 4. He's only 20 years old. As Jesus Ramos at 21, 22, already at number 5. These two are going to make for a big Mexican-Puerto Rican fight one day. I know you see the American flag for Ramos, but we all know he's Chicano. Him and Zayas are the future of that division, along with Charles Conwell. Let me tell you guys something while we're here. Charles Conwell and Tszyu is one of the best action fights that could be made in boxing. Charles Conwell and Tszyu would be pure guaranteed violence. That fight would be incredible. That, in terms of playing match, if you're trying to make your best Morales, Barrera, Gotti Ward, kind of war fight, David Tua, Ika Beabuchi, this is that fight right here. Charles Conwell, Tszyu. Take Charlo and Crawford out of it, I think that's the best fight that could be made at 154. Would be Charles Conwell, Tszyu. They're both super educated pressure fighters who are great on the front foot. That would just be that'd be an amazing war, Charles Conwell and Tszyu. But anyways, to get back to your OP Gamer, yeah, I would actually love to see that Josh Kelly fight with Tszyu. Tszyu probably got the right style to beat up Josh Kelly, get through his speed and his tricks, and get him on the ropes and hurt him repeatedly. But I would like to see that fight. Josh Kelly, who I got to be honest, I haven't followed him in a couple of years, but when he was 4-0, 5-0 out of England, it was, wow, who's this kid with all this sauce, all this talent and flash from England? Then he winds up getting upset somewhere along the way, kind of like Daniel Dubois did to Joe Joyce, but he lost to a not as big a name as Dubois did to Joyce. I'd like to see that fight. I think Tszyu would beat Josh Kelly based on what I've known from Josh Kelly when he was a young prospect. He's the kind of guy with more flash than substance. He was never fundamentally sound when I would watch him, but he had a lot of talent. But Tszyu is fundamentally sound and knows how to hunt a man down, cut the ring off, get to his body and break him down. Underrated hand speed. So I think he would take care of business. Even if he did have to fight through a Josh Kelly to get his belt, he's going to get that belt one way or the other. And he deserves that belt. He deserves that belt. Look, Charlo's doing what he's got to do. You take a fight with Canelo to make the big money and dare to be great and all that, and that's wonderful. But Tszyu got ducked along the way. They were supposed to fight in January. I think Charlo would have won that fight. I think it's been a blessing in disguise for Tszyu. He's only gotten better with the experience he needed. Now, if he were to fight Charlo, he'd stand a much better chance than he would have January 28th. But that being said, he has the right to say he was ducked, and he has the right to get a shot at one of those 4 belts. So, even if he had to get through Josh Kelly, I think he'd handle his business. So, let me see here. He's one of the best pressure. He's developing into one of the best pressure fighters in the sport. That's why I'd love to see him and Charles Conwell fight. That would just be an absolute war. That'd be violent. Blind Faith, thank you so much for the shout out, man, and the super chat. Blind Faith saying, Sean, you're the man. Appreciate that. Which prospects to watch? What's next for Virgil? Bam Rodriguez, Frank Martin, Deontay Wilder, Sebastian Fundora, Brian Castano, Alicia and Serrano, and what's my favorite interview? See, that's how you make your super chats worth it. Way to go, Blind Faith. All right. Which prospects to watch for? I liked Ashton Sylvie over the weekend. I thought he was the fighter of the night. Actually, let me go to my own Twitter. Blowing up everyone else's Twitter. Let me go to my own. This is what I tweeted. Fighter of the night was Ashton Sylvie. I like that kid. He's very fast and gifted with good reflexes and speed. He's willing to engage and is creative, dynamic offensively. Did good punching in between punches. I love that. And countering. I love that too. That's very hard, sophisticated stuff to do at the top level. And if you're already doing some of that at 19, it's impressive. So at 19, I think he's very bright prospect. So I'll start there. I like Ashton Sylvie. He's not my favorite prospect in the division. He might actually be my 3rd favorite prospect in the division because it's so loaded. I of course, like Keyshawn. But my favorite prospect at lightweight might be Abdullah Mason. He's a tremendous prospect. Elsewhere on the prospect front, I gotta reload a little bit. I like Jamal Harvey coming up out of the USA Olympic teams. He might win a gold medal for us in 2024, but Jamal Harvey, no doubt about it, he'll be a world champion. I'll have to get back to that on the prospects. You got a couple other things I gotta get to in your super chat. What's next for Virgil? Some serious contemplation about his body and what his body can perform and handle. I guess 147 is safe to say is not in his future. And he's just got to contemplate how much boxing can be a part of his future. Whatever keeps getting his body to shut down on him has to be rectified before we keep it going. Virgil's a guy who just recently was in line to fight Crawford, was Crawford's mandatory. And I was starting to bang the drum that say, just activate it, Virgil. If the Spence fight's never going to happen, activate it. It's a good thing he never did because I thought Crawford, even though I picked him by knockout over Spence because of the counterpunching, I thought Crawford was starting to slow down in his legs and was starting to get hit more. And I thought a guy like Virgil Ortiz, who throws a lot of punches, is a good combination puncher and a big, strong welterweight, might be able to take advantage of a potentially fading Terence Crawford. Turns out, Crawford, if given the shine, if given the bright spotlight, can still dial it up to 10 or 11. And that Crawford would have tuned Virgil Ortiz up. So it's a good thing he didn't listen to me. But I just don't know what's next for Virgil. I don't know if Virgil knows what's next for Virgil. But I do wish him the best because, right behind Boots, he was the best young welterweight we had. Boots number 1, him number 2. And a ticket seller and becoming a knockout artist. 100% knockout ratio, combination puncher, great power jab, great size at 47 with enough size to go up to 54 and still be a big, strong 54. So I wish Virgil the best. Bam Rodriguez, Bam's got Sonny Edwards, and he's got to stop Sonny Edwards from unifying and getting a date with Clarissa Shields. He's got a tough fight on his hands. Sonny Edwards has the affection of the GWOAT to fight for, so that's not going to be he's got a lot to contend with on the motivation side of Sonny Edwards. Can't underestimate that kind of thing. But I expect Bam to win that fight. It's two guys with great footwork, great skills, but one guy's a much better puncher than the other, and that's Bam Rodriguez. So I expect Bam to beat Sonny, but Sonny's going to fight like hell to try to win the heart of Clarissa Shields. Deontay Wilder, it looks like that fight with Ruiz is slowed to a halt. We've had no updates about it. Maybe that's a good thing after all. I don't think either guy has a whole ton of options. Ruiz is talking about put me in again for Joshua Part 3, and no one's listening to that. But we've had no updates on Wilder and Ruiz. I don't know if that's a good or a bad sign. We'll see. If it's not going to be that, maybe... I gotta believe it when I see it that Wilder will fight Joshua and Saudi and all that. I don't know. I don't know what's to come next of Wilder, but I think he's very serious about wanting to fight a big name next. If I had to guess, I would guess that he winds up fighting Ruiz and not Joshua by year's end in 2023. They'll get the money right if I had to guess, and they'll make it happen, but maybe they won't. We'll see. Fundora, I keep hearing Fundora is likely to get a rematch with Brian Mendoza, so we'll see if Fundora gets that rematch. He was winning every round up until the point he got knocked out by the knockout of the year, in my opinion. I know some people felt Junto Nakatani against Maloney was the knockout of the year. I kind of feel like with Mendoza being 6 rounds down and being this huge underdog, that you got to take that into account. Maybe that's the knockout of the year and not Junto Nakatani. But I'm hearing Fundora might get that rematch. And then as for the other Brian Castano, haven't heard anything about him. He called out Errol Spence. He beat Errol Spence in the amateurs. Apparently wants to fight him again. We'll see. Alicia Serrano, I'm going to go Alicia. Definitely going to go Alicia. Look, I got a lot of respect for Serrano. She's one of only 3 6 division plus champions. Her, Pacquiao, De La Hoya. I think Inoue is going to join them in the next couple years. He's going to go all the way up to 130, 126 and become the 4th 6 division champ. But despite all of Serrano's accomplished, Alicia is younger, fresher, and has a better defense and a better jab. So I think Alicia has enough and then has the power to keep Amanda respectful and not have Amanda just throw a bunch of combinations and come forward and eat whatever's coming back and look to land 2 or 3 in return. I think she has enough in her jab and her right hand and her check left hook to make Serrano tamed a little bit more than Serrano's ever been. That's a great fight, but I just favor Alicia. She's younger, she's fresher, she has the better defense and the better jab, and she's better on the outside. Now, if Serrano makes it a war, makes it toe-to-toe type of fight, she could win that kind of fight against Baumgartner, who likes to fight at a certain pace. But I feel like Alicia's got the youth and the skills and the defense to dictate that pace, slow it down a little bit, make it more of a boxing match on the outside that'll favor her. I got Baumgartner. I think Baumgartner is the second best in female boxing behind Shields. Bronco Kid said, Sean Zittel, I told you Trey Lance wasn't that guy. Bronco Kid, we don't even know if Trey Lance wasn't that guy. They don't give him a chance enough to show if he's that guy. Bronco Kid, I disagree. I still think Trey Lance is going to be the guy for the Niners, bro. I don't think it's Brock. We'll see. Give my boy a chance. Blind Faith said, thank you. Gave me another super chat. Said, top 5 moments in my boxing media career. I don't know. That's tough. It's tough to say. I think Floyd Mayweather coming over to me in the middle of the Kaepernick situation when Kaepernick took a knee and he just randomly came over to me and started talking with me, and the interview went viral on the Breakfast Club and everything. That was back in like 2016, 15, 17. That was a cool moment. In terms of professional journalism, it's not something to be too proud of, but I'm to be quite honest, I'm kind of personally proud of the work I did with Rolly before Tank, because Rolly was a 14-0 kid, and I think our interviews in part literally helped sell that pay-per-view. Rolly was dynamite on the mic anytime I put him on camera. And again, not so much from a professional journalism aspect, but from a personal aspect, I was kind of proud that me and Rolly talking shit in gyms in Las Vegas helped promote a multi-million dollar Showtime pay-per-view. It was just kind of funny to me. But probably my favorite moments are with the young fighters, with Haney before he was a pro, with Teofimo when he was in the High Performance Center, working with Sean and Kenny Porter and seeing their bond up close and how hard Sean works and the kind of people the Porters are. That was fun for me to work up close with. Seeing David Benavidez spar and hurt people in Abel Sanchez's Summit Gym was a good time for me. And anytime I get a fighter that's not the easiest to open up, like a Loma or someone like that, that's a good moment. Some of my proudest moments are if you go back and watch my interviews before fights, a lot of my questions are prophetic. I'm asking Danny Garcia before the Errol Spence fight, you don't throw, essentially you don't throw enough punches. Are you going to throw enough punches this fight? And Danny kind of, I don't know, we'll see. And then sure enough, it plays out. Me asking Errol Spence before Terence Crawford, what about the counterpunching? What about the counterpunching? What about the counterpunching? Asking him over and over again, asking Terence to elaborate on his counterpunching. And even though neither guy really gave me anything on it, once the fight played out, that's exactly what it was all about, the counterpunching. Ryan and Tank asking Tank about body shots, and then him saying, well, he got hurt to the body in camp, and he revealed a mole in that interview, and then it turns out he knocks him out to the body. That's what I'm proud of, when my boxing IQ holds up well as time goes on. And you go back and watch the interview, and I was able to ask kind of prophetically all the stuff that winds up playing out on fight night, even though more than half the time the fighters don't receive those questions well. They don't give me good feedback on it, because it's too close to the game plan. They don't want to reveal the game plan. They don't want to reveal stuff that's actually important. So they talk about all the unimportant shit with everybody else. But I always try to get to the X's and O's, the game plan. And understandably, fighters are hesitant to open up with me about that, because the game is to be sold and not told. But that's what I'm proud of. I'm proud of talking about the technical aspects of boxing and getting it right once the fight plays out. And you see, I wasn't... Now, sometimes I get it wrong. I was asking a lot of people about Crawford's legs. Turns out there was nothing wrong with his legs. So, sometimes you get it wrong too. But, yeah. Let's see. Helping young guys get some shine is something I'm always proud of. And then over time, they don't need my help anymore. And the world knows who they are. But I take pride in helping get them something of an audience, letting people know about their talent early on when not everybody knows about them. So, Raider Reaper, thank you for the super chat, said Ruiz versus AJ3, Plant versus Charlo, Navarrete versus Valdez. What's up, Raider Reaper? Let me see here. El Finksay said, you are nothing near a professional journalist. Well, my friend, I did graduate for it. 4.0 GPA, and you should, if you feel that way, you should spend your Monday afternoon listening to someone you do feel is a professional journalist, my friend. So, more power to you. But Ruiz versus AJ3, I would go with AJ. I don't know. Still an interesting. I would go with AJ. But I don't think it's happening. Plant versus Charlo. A lot of people are saying Charlo should just take that fight right away, come right back and fight Caleb Plant. That's a fight that's got buzz now and went viral during Spence Crawford fight week. That's a good fight. I'd have always favored Charlo. I wouldn't have, but with inactivity, and he's never fought at 68. But there's questions with Plant too. What's left of Plant after that Benavidez fight? Will he be the same? He took a lot of punishment in the second half of that fight. The kind of punishment that sometimes could take something off of a fighter. So they both have question marks about him. Right now, I'd have to favor Plant. He was extremely sharp for 5 rounds against Benavidez. And he's been at 68 his whole career. And he's been a lot more active than Charlo. So you'd have to favor Plant right now. But Charlo, firing on all cylinders, comfortable at 68. I think he could win that fight. But how could he be firing on all cylinders and comfortable at 68 when he's never fought there and hasn't fought in over 2 years? So I'd have to favor Plant. Navarrete versus Valdez. I favor Valdez, the shorter, more compact puncher with better hand speed, better head movement. That short left hook inside of that winging uppercut that Navarrete throws from far out. He doesn't always throw it up close. He throws it from far out. Guys like Liam Wilson caught him in between with a left hook and hurt him. So I think Valdez will do the same. But my gut does tell me Valdez been in a lot of wars. Navarrete's younger and fresher. Maybe Navarrete wins that fight. Maybe can make it a stoppage late if Valdez can't get out of the way of that uppercut down the stretch of the fight. But I'll give the edge to Valdez. But I do worry a little bit about that wear and tear against this younger Navarrete. Valdez has been looking good in the clips I see with Reynoso, though. Been looking fast, sharp, and explosive like he did for Burchell. So, put a gun to my head, put me on the record. I'll take Valdez. But if Navarrete is fresher and busts up this man that's 4 years older and has had a lot of wars, won't be too surprised. Molly Mall, good. Thank you for the super chat. Said, does anybody not named Crawford challenge Boots? I mean, it remains to be seen because he's so unproven. I think he takes care of Stanionis. I think he takes care of Keith Thurman, but the Keith Thurman that fought Mario Barrios still has some juice, still has some tricks up his sleeve, still could set some traps. And I think Boots would beat Thurman and would probably even stop him because he'd keep his foot on the gas. But Thurman early, especially in the first half of that fight, before Boots starts to warm up, he could really hurt Boots because he's still good at setting traps with his right hand and his left hook. I thought he actually looked good against Mario Barrios, who was more comfortable at welterweight, Barrios was, and let his hands go more than he did against Gervonta Davis. So I thought Barrios actually performed well despite lopsided losing that night. But yeah, Thurman, not as athletic as he used to be, still got some juice, still could set some traps based on what I saw against Barrios. So he could potentially buzz Boots early, but I think that's the best he could do. I think the best he could do is catch Boots with a trap early. Boots would survive it, turn it up, and maybe get him out of there. So, but that would be a challenge. Stanionis, I think we'll see. If Boots' defense is a little overrated and is leaky, like it's shown at times, for every time he gets hit, though, he makes you miss 10 other shots with great upper body movement and reflexes and moves. Sometimes he gets too cute on defense, gets too extra when all you need to do is just catch the shot. But unless his defense is way overrated, then he'll piece up Stanionis, who comes in straight up and down, fast, sharp, strong, tough, but compact, but is straight up and down. Not a whole lot of upper body movement or counter punching coming out of Stanionis. So I think Boots would counter him and punch him between his shots, touch that body out of that high guard, touch the body, and take care of business. So, yeah, I think those guys could give him some issues, but ultimately he beats everybody at welterweight, not named Terence Crawford, and that's why I want to see the fight. So I'd favor Crawford, but I want to see it. Do I think Spence will do better in a rematch? Not really. No, not really. It's just a bad style matchup for him. Boxing analyst keeps saying, my bad, boxing analyst, I got to read it. He said, Sean, I think Boo Boo is going to get destroyed. Poor Boo Boo. He might. I think he'll do well in the first 4 rounds, kind of like the Plant fight. He'll do well early, but once he starts to try to coast and pop shot, and the Benavidez won't let it be at that pace, he'll be all over him. And again, Andrade's legs aren't what they were at 54 or even 60. So I expect Andrade to do his thing, land his left hand in the first couple rounds, but Benavidez might stop him late. Wouldn't be surprised if Benavidez stops him. I definitely got Benavidez beating him. OP Gamer, I agree with you, said Ortiz was the only other competition for Ennis, in my opinion. I agree. Everyone knows they were the top 2 young guys. Raider Reaper saying Crowley at 22-0 is greater than Ortiz at 19-0. No, 2 different levels, Raider Reaper. You know I love you, brother, but Cody Crowley's just tough and in good shape. He doesn't punch hard. He's not fast. He doesn't counter. He doesn't have a lot of head movement. He's just tough, good size at welterweight, solid strength. But no, Cody Crowley is not a problem for any of the top dogs at welterweight. Even, he would give Keith Thurman some issues just based off conditioning and lack of, Thurman being so inactive. But Thurman would take care of Crowley. Stanionis would beat Crowley. Boots will stop Crowley. Crowley, nice guy, tough guy, great story, but no. He is not better than Virgil Ortiz. He's not on that level. He's not of that caliber. Tough guy who's earned his way to a mandatory title shot to the IBF, but him and Boots will be very ugly, mark my words, if they were to fight. And I have a feeling that is going to be Boots' next fight for the full IBF title. Stanionis might fight somebody else, and then they can make Boots and Stanionis for the IBF WBA belts. Maybe they could speed that up and have them maybe elevate Boots to full IBF since he's already the interim champ. Maybe elevate Stanionis to full WBA since he's already the regular champ or the interim champ. And maybe they make that fight next to waste no time. That's not exactly fair to Stanionis, who's had to wait over a year for this Virgil fight to keep getting delayed, but maybe they do that. If you're trying to move Boots along quicker, you make that fight happen next for Boots. But if you're being fair to both guys, you don't make that fight next because Stanionis is coming in off a year more layoff. But even if he gets a fight in, he's going to lose to Boots. So, Raider Reaper said Canadian Cody Crowley, CCC, don't sleep on him. I don't mean to sleep on him, brother. I'm not disrespecting the man. The man's earned where he's got in boxing. I don't see him really competing on the top level at welterweight with the best of the best. So, yeah. Rafael Aguayo says, what has Boots Ennis done? And why is he even in the same conversation as Crawford? Rafael Aguayo, that'd be like saying, what has Jermaine Taylor done? What has Jermaine Taylor even done to be mentioned in the same breath as Bernard Hopkins? If you know boxing, you know when a guy passes that eye test. And even Roy Monvilla isn't a bad fighter, 26-1, 24 knockouts, that only lost in Mexico to a Mexican by split decision. He probably won that fight. And then he drops Rashidi Ellis, who was a fringe top 10 welterweight. So Villa's not some bum. Okay, he's not some bum, and he destroyed him, completely dismantled him. That was a very impressive performance. Outside of that, guys like Lip and Yates were 140-pounders. The resume is far from impressive. But isn't this partly what they were saying about Bud at welter? I know it's different. Bud was already undisputed at 140, was the lineal at 135, beat Jeff Horn after Horn beat Pacquiao, so much, much, much more accomplished than what Boots is right now. But it's the spirit of the same point. What has Bud done? What has Bud done? Resume. Spence has a better resume. Then he put Bud in there and he blew all that shit away. Forget resume. If you know boxing, you know nobody can match the speed, the power, the switch hitting, the counter punching, the athleticism of Terence Crawford, but Boots Ennis. And he may not be able to match it, but if anybody can match it at welterweight, it's him. He's the guy that has the jab out of both stances, has the heavy hands and the snapping power in both hands, has the punch arsenal in both hands. He has uppercuts, he has hooks, he's a great body puncher. He jabs out of both stances. So that... yeah, man. Once upon a time, they all didn't fight anybody until they got a chance to. Floyd Mayweather fought nobody, and then he blows out Genaro Hernandez, who was 38-1 and was the champion for, a half decade or whatever. So, I mean, again, Crawford could do that if he wants. Crawford and his fans can say that if he wants, and it's fine. They'll get away. If he never fights Boots, it's okay. He proved himself at welterweight. He became undisputed, won every fight by knockout. Every fight was a title fight from Jump Street, from the Horn fight on. So, I'm not taking anything away from Crawford, but I know what my eyes see. My eyes see a James Toney, Mike McCallum kind of matchup. Both guys double jabbing. Both guys countering each other's counter. Power and speed. It'd be a great fight. So, we'll see. Blind Faith says, thank you for the super chat, Blind Faith. Blind Faith says, fantasy fight, because your IQ is so high. Floyd Patterson versus Jack Dempsey. Michael Spinks versus Bob Foster. Sonny Liston, Lennox Lewis. That's an easy one. Lennox Lewis over Sonny Liston. Aaron Pryor versus Floyd. That's a tough fight. Charlie Burley versus Felix Trinidad. That's probably going to favor Charlie Burley there. Salvador Sanchez versus Sweet Pea. Holmes versus Usyk. All right. Starting with Holmes versus Usyk, Blind Faith, I got Larry Holmes. Larry Holmes will be fighting a man his own size as opposed to these giants. And I think he's got everything he needs against the southpaw. Some people would say Usyk will nullify the jab of Larry Holmes because it's a southpaw versus orthodox. He's got that lead hand, and he's so good at baiting the jab out and making you question your distance. He's so good at feigning with his lead hand, getting you out of position, and then he jabs over the top of yours and sets up that left hand behind it and his little slicing combinations. But Holmes had that piston jab, and Holmes had a great right hand. He threw a right hand like he was a welterweight or a middleweight. He placed that bitch down the pipe with great speed. Larry Holmes, one of the fastest heavyweights ever. I think he's even faster than Usyk coming up from cruiserweight, and he's sharper than Usyk. Usyk's more of this, got his own unique style of punching him and Lomachenko do, and they knife their shots. They're sharp in their own way. But Larry Holmes had that pinpoint, old-school American, bing, that straight right hand. He'll drop it right down the pipe, and he could counter with it. I think he would counter the southpaw with that straight right hand. He'd get the distance. He could contend with Usyk's front hand magic with his own amazing jab, and I think that right hand would be a killer for Usyk. Larry Holmes was sharp and as fast as they get at heavyweight. So I got Larry Holmes over Usyk. No disrespect to Usyk. Salvador versus Sweet Pea. Sweet Pea all day. I love Salvador Sanchez, my favorite Mexican fighter of all time, my favorite featherweight of all time. But he was a featherweight, and Sweet Pea became a champion at lightweight and moved all the way up to 54. If Sal would have ever moved up 9 pounds to lightweight to fight Sweet Pea, I definitely would have favored Sweet Pea. Liston and Lennox Lewis. Lennox Lewis all day. Sonny Liston had his era, 6'1", had long arms like he was 6'5", like Lennox Lewis, but not a lot of head movement from Sonny Liston. A big puncher. I just think Lennox had a better. Sonny Liston had a great jab, long arms. They both had great jabs. I just think Lennox was bigger. Good big man beats the good smaller man. I got Lennox Lewis against Sonny Liston. Michael Spinks, Bob Foster. Probably give the edge to Michael Spinks. As long as he stays out of the way of that power. Bob Foster, maybe the best puncher in light heavyweight history, but also was a little chinny. And Michael Spinks, along with being a fantastic boxer at light heavyweight, could punch at light heavyweight. I'd probably give the edge to Spinks. He was a better boxer than Bob Foster, who was a great puncher, great lanky, wiry puncher. I give the edge to Michael Spinks, better boxer. Patterson and Dempsey, ooh. You know, I'm tempted to pick Patterson because he's got faster hands and everything and is kind of better technically, but he was chinny. And all Jack Dempsey would have needed to do was hang in there and land one big left hook, and that could have been the beginning of the end for Floyd Patterson. I might go with the upset. If Jack Dempsey's chin could hold up for 5 or 6 rounds, I think he could land a hook and hurt and stop Floyd Patterson. But I don't know. That's a tough one. We're going way back with that one. Thank you, Blind Faith. Thank you for the super chat. So yeah. Thank you, Raider Reaper. Raider Reaper said Sean don't need Google. His history knowledge is highly respectable. Thank you, bro. And I'm rusty. I've forgotten more things than I remember. You know, guys like John Scully or even Doug Fisher could still school me historically, but I'm pretty good in my own right. And you know, smoking weed makes you forget things too much. So I've forgotten too much about history too. But by the way, shout out to my wife for the crab cakes. They're cold now. I didn't want to eat them on stream, but it's a shame. They were good. So yeah. But all right, chat. Prime Pac-Man versus Prime Duran at 35. Ooh, Duran. I'll go Duran. Pacquiao's still a little light in the ass. Still could get backed on the ropes at 35. His only fight at 35 was David Diaz, and he looked amazing. I'll give the edge to Duran. I'll give the edge to Duran over Pac-Man. I saw the way Marquez's punch placement gave him issues, so we'll see. But then again, you know, Duran trying to come in aggressive could run into the buzzsaw with Pacquiao. It would have been a great fight. Is Keith Thurman a gatekeeper at this point, Bronco Kid? He won't allow himself to be. He's not active enough to be a gatekeeper. You know, he won't allow himself to be. So, but, let me see here. Does Crawford beat the Canelo that Floyd fought? He probably could. Crawford says he's not even entertaining fighting the Canelo now at 168 pounds. But yeah, 23-year-old Canelo who had to get down to 52. Not that it mattered really, but had to get down to 52. I think Crawford could have went up to 54 and beat that version of Canelo. Yeah, but to Canelo's credit, Crawford's not even entertaining the idea of fighting the 168-pound version of Canelo. So to be fair to Canelo, but yeah. At cruiserweight, Real Deal, Usyk, or Roy. Well, Roy never fought at cruiserweight, but I imagine Roy would have been amazing at cruiserweight. But Real Deal or Usyk at cruiserweight, you know, maybe I'm being biased, I'm being American here, but I'm going to go Real Deal. I'm going to go Holyfield. Part of that is probably a little bit of preference to style. Usyk, as great as he is, and I got a lot of love and respect for Usyk. He's incredible. But he's got more of that awkward heavy feinting with the lead hand, heavy feinting, in and out, and then throws his own style of punches. Holyfield from that USA boxing Olympic program, he's got more of that clean American style, side-to-side movement. Usyk uses a ton of lateral movements, but he almost spins circles around you. Holyfield, that traditional side-to-side, bouncing up and down on the toes. Usyk bounces up and down on his toes too, but again, it's his own unique Ukrainian, Eastern European way of doing it. Holyfield had more of that, I'll say, clean bounce, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 up, up and down. It's a more of a, normal American style. I think he was a better puncher than Usyk. So Evan Fields getting some of those Balco deliveries couldn't have hurt, but let's not digress into that again. But I would give the edge to Holyfield. I'll give the edge to Holyfield. Mayweather, Sugar Ray Robinson. I'm giving the edge to Robinson because he was huge at welterweight. He was almost 6 feet tall. Threw the kind of punches and bunches with the kind of hand speed that even if Floyd's shoulder rolling, making a miss 4 or 5 of them, all he needs is one of them in that sequence to get in to make his point. Had a great jab. Floyd would have touched up Sugar Ray Robinson, but kind of like his dad did Sugar Ray Leonard. He was touching him with his stuff, but I think as the fight goes on, those guys, Robinson breaks through with some of that combination punch. It starts to crack the defensive code a little bit of Mayweather. I would have picked Robinson. So Shane Mosley versus Bud Crawford in their prime. At 135, I'm taking Shane. At 147, ooh, God, that's a great fight, man. That's a great fight. You cannot sleep on the explosiveness of Shane Mosley, man. At 38 years old, one of those right hands almost had Floyd out in the second round. At 28 years old, he had a million more of those arrows in his quiver. Man, prime Sugar Shane that fought Oscar against Terence. That's a 50-50 kind of fight. Terence is a little bit more savvy with his craft, a better counterpuncher, but he's not the athlete that Shane was at that time. It's a 50-50 kind of fight. Usyk has that dog like Crawford. He gets stronger as the fight goes on. He is a dog, absolutely, but so was Holyfield. Pacquiao versus Jermell and Jermell Charlo at 54. Ooh, that's an interesting one because they're so much bigger than him. Tough fight. I mean, it's hard to even imagine because that size difference. But I guess the Charlo that fought Jason Rosario and Castano against Pacquiao at 54, that fought Margarito, that'd have been a great fight. I'm tempted to favor Pacquiao, as crazy as that sounds, because he's Manny Pacquiao at that time. That was Pacquiao at the peak of his power still when he fought Margarito. He threw 1,000 punches a fight, and his footwork and speed were incredible. I might actually give the edge to Pacquiao there, but these are hypotheticals. But all right, chat. I'll get going. I think that's about it for now. Thank you for all 500 plus who joined into Fight Hype Live today. A little bit of a slower week. This Saturday, again, I'll be in Glendale, Arizona for Valdez Navarrete. Be sure to check out the interviews we get between now and then. I'll be live Monday at noon next week to recap everything we see from Valdez Navarrete and everything else going on. Hopefully Joshua gets a replacement opponent. I could do a round by round for that. Might do a round by round ringside for Valdez Navarrete. It's a little tougher when we're ringside as opposed to at home. But thank you everybody for joining in tonight, for today, this afternoon. Have a great rest of the week and keep it locked in here on Fight Hype. Much love, everyone. Peace.